Hello everyone, good evening. It's me again, Hussein Asiri from Hawiyati TV. And today, my special guest is Fawaz Al Shaikh, BG Harmony, and let's not forget the founder of Conference of Birds. And today, thank you first of all, Fawaz, for being my guest.
You are most welcome.
And today we'll be discovering, of course, Fawaz, his true passion behind singing, and his story of how he started, of course, and as Hawiyati aims to embrace our identity. So before I start, Fawaz, may you please give me a brief background about yourself first as a person? Who are you?
Well, first of all, my name is Fawaz Al Shaikh. I am 38 years old. My career job is in banking. So I'm a banker mainly. I've had this passion in music since I was around 6 or 7 years old. I started learning that music is my thing when I started getting more interest, even like at school, participating with the music class, going to the music room during breaks. That gave me an indication that I have something passionate related to music. So it kept on going forward and forward until I graduated from school. Till I went to university, and that activity kept on ongoing and growing at the same time. I did not take huge projects back then when I was in uni and when I was in school. I think because I still thought that the priority is to focus on my career in a way. So music was still there. It wasn't the first priority in my life, but it's definitely the second. So I took my time until I settled with a good banking job. I've been working now for about 16 years in the banking industry. So when I found that settling mood, that's when I started taking music more seriously, because I had the time, and co-founded the band BG Harmony, where we started with 4 people, now we're about 6. And we've been active in Bahrain, performing live almost all events across the island for the past 7 years now. And another stage came out where I wanted to create my own music on my own. And that's where Conference of Birds came into the picture about 2 years ago, and released my debut album back in February 2021.
Yes, interesting. Because I still remember a few months ago in April, I was in the People event, and Fawaz was talking to us about his album, which interestingly brings me to my point, Fawaz. So since you mentioned how you were started as a banking industry, and of course you still work, I believe, in the banking industry, or you left the industry of banking?
I'm still working.
Okay, interesting. So you mix and match between business and singing. And so as an entrepreneur, let's say by yourself, since you already have your own album, may you please explain to us the idea behind your album, your debut album, and what inspired you to create this album?
Certainly. That's a question I'd love to answer. First of all, I had the choice of naming myself as an artist with my real name, Fawaz Al Shaikh, or using a stage name. I had leaned more towards having a stage name because it would be nice to get a catchy name than just a normal person's name. And I had to look around to find the right title for an artist. That's where Conference of Birds came from. Now, Conference of Birds is actually a book written by Attar, but that's not where I got inspired by the title. that's where one of my all-time favorite songwriters, Chris Martin, wrote a song called "A Head Full of Dreams," and it was inspired by that book. But I got inspired by the title when he sang it in his lyrics, "In a Head Full of Dreams," and he said "Conference of Birds." And the reason why it took my attention is because when recording an album, it's pretty obvious I'm not going to be the only one who's going to work on the album. There's going to be a sound engineer, there are going to be vocalists, instrumentalists. So there are a bunch of people who actually participated. They added so much value to this album. And I wanted to credit them in every way possible. And the best way was to have a title where we were in a conference and we performed, we recorded, and we released. It's true that I wrote the songs, but I couldn't have released an album without their support.
Absolutely. I mean, one hand doesn't clap by itself. And I remember, Fawaz, when you were in that event with the people, you asked us an interesting question. What is your favorite color? What is your favorite number? Which brings me to the point of now, I don't want to spoil the album more, but let's talk about specifically the album songs. How many songs are there and where is it released now? I'm sure it's not just in digital platforms.
Yeah. So the album is actually an EP, which consists of 5 songs. There's a song called Fly, another called Jasmine. Third one is called Two Lost Boys on the Run. The fourth one is A Wild Heart at Sea. And the fifth one is called Dire Choir. This album has been released in all digital platforms such as Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon, and Rami, you name it. But physically, as a CD, it is offered at Virgin Megastores. It's offered at La Guitarra Music Center. It's also at Arab Vinyl on Instagram and Room to Rock.
Interesting. I still remember Jasmine, very interesting. I like the name of the songs. You know, they're very inspirational and the messages behind them. Like, I'm sure every song has a story. So as you mentioned, of course, the power of songwriters, compositions, and the whole package. So Fawaz, of course, why did you decided to make it as a mini album? I mean, just 5 songs, not more than 5 songs. I mean,
okay.
Why?
Okay, honestly speaking, and I'll be very transparent. I needed time. These 5 songs took about probably 10 months to record. And those 10 months were during COVID. And we had a lot of time during COVID. And since it's a debut album, I wanted to use this as an experiment to see or to identify myself, to know what I'm capable of. I'm definitely doing more albums in the future. This was like a sample for me to know what I'm capable of doing. At the same time, it's an album where it can push me to use it as a benchmark to know what else I can do. So I think a handful of songs was good enough for a debut album.
Interesting, because of course thanks to the pandemic, we as artists or as influencers or celebrities, we had the full opportunity to discover our potential and skills. And as you said, like with those 10 months that you recorded 5 songs. And I believe now it's all about, you know, the quality over the quantity for songs and albums, especially now. I mean, why didn't, you know, some singers might just release a single that might hit for a long period of time, but you decided to have an album. Fawaz, have you recorded a music video yet, or you haven't, like a music video for songs?
I have not. I've actually planned to do a video for Jasmine. I've been doing some brainstorming for it. I didn't honestly have enough time, and I didn't want to cancel anything visual. So I took an alternative of doing a film of me and my friends performing those songs live. And we actually did that in a maybe 6-month period where we practiced, we rehearsed with vocalists. We had five backing vocalists, a bass guitarist, electric guitarist, acoustic guitarist, and a drummer. And we released that video on YouTube. I believe it was back in October. It's available on YouTube, it's available on Instagram, and it represented those songs, but in a live version.
Okay, that seems cool. I like the idea of having live version for songs, because as you notice, like now the trend of mashups, of course, or does just official videos, but low budget or low direction, but it's very impactful and it becomes trending. So Fawaz, since you were talking about, okay, you're 38 years old now, but you've been in the industry for a long time, for the music industry. Okay, I know that age is just a number, but do you believe that, okay, if I was living, for example, Fawaz, why didn't you start maybe earlier, like release a debut album? Or you feel that, okay, I had time to discover my skills and potentials, and now, okay, as being almost 40, it's time to release the album. Like, why not earlier?
I think as a songwriter, everyone would love to start as early as 16, 18, or 20 years old, because you'll have like a couple of decades where you can actually do so much with that time. I had two factors that worked against me. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, my career was my priority. I did not sacrifice that at all. The second part, which is quite interesting, and I'm sure that most songwriters would agree with, is that resources back then, if we're talking 16 years ago, we're talking about 2005, 2006, we did not have enough resources to produce albums. We had few studios in Bahrain. They were quite costly, and we required so much instruments, gadgets. But nowadays, with digitalization, we can get digital tools like digital mixers, audio interfaces, where we actually have now studios at home. You can work at home. And with time, the cost goes down and resources are growing. So that factor helped me a lot nowadays. But if you would ask me if I hoped or wished to do something 10 or 15 years ago, I would say no, because I think the time I released the album, I felt the maturity and capability of doing something on my own. So it's always better late than never, as they say.
Yeah, better late than never. And you only live once, so live the best of it.
Yeah.
Fawaz, with now, since we are, okay, of course, artists are easily can be famous. I mean, with the power of Spotify and Rami and, all those musical digital platforms. For example, now let's mention the other aspect of those music competitions, The Voice, X Factor, Arabs Got Talent, and etc. As a singer and songwriter, Fawaz, do you believe that those programs offer like the singer a chance to, okay, get famous? Or, okay, I know some singers who haven't went to those programs because they have just started recently. Do you think it's more of a commercial aspect of The Voice, the X Factor, or you think, okay, it's good for a chance, but not, not for a long period of time?
Interesting question. I've never been asked that question. And again, I'll be honest and transparent. I'm not fond as much of these programs. I do watch them whenever they're like beautiful singers and vocalists perform. It's very entertaining. But in the end, there are two highways. The first highway is writing what you want, doing what you want, whether people are going to like it or not. The other highway is you have capabilities musically and vocally. You have resources such as record labels and sound engineers and everything, and producers, sorry. And you do what you're told to do because the market is asking for it, whether you like it or not. That's the difference. I chose the first highway. I write the music that I enjoy performing and recording. If out of 1,000 people, only 10 would appreciate it, those 10 are going to represent 1,000 people for me. Rather than having, for example, 1 million people who are waiting to listen to a specific kind of music that producers and record labels ask me to do. I think that's the solid difference between those two.
I love how you defined it, because that brings me to my next point, Fawaz. Speaking of record label, I mean, of course, all singers aim to sign with a record label contract and, get more viral, since it's the digital age now and one song can get viral. Fawaz, have you think of signing like to a record label in the near future, at least?
I don't know. The answer is I don't know. But I know one fact. Record label means business. You're going to sign people who are going to make business. Music revolution, or let's say music has revolutionized in the past 3-4 decades, from classic rock to disco music to reggae. It's revolutionized to electronic, EDM, whatsoever. So if you ask what the market requires now, it's completely the opposite of what I can provide. So when there's a record label that are interested in signing a musician that relies solely 100% on acoustic instruments, because Conference of Birds album has been recorded with natural acoustic instruments such as contrabass, a grand piano, a Yamaha grand piano, which was very difficult to record with, vocals, live vocals at the studio, acoustic guitar, a trumpet in the song Jasmine. So these kind of instruments are not usually the common resource in recording music styles of nowadays. Nowadays, it's about digital music, beats, electro bass, and stuff like that. So when you ask about record labels, they're going to look for what the business requires. Unless, as I mentioned earlier, that if there is a specific record label who's looking for something classic, something acoustic, then definitely yes. But knowing the market in our region, let's say Middle East in general, they are mostly, let's say 80 or 90% focusing on what the music industry wants today, not 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, and Fawaz, I've been looking at now that how interesting the digital age is with artificial intelligence, for example, music. But of course, since you're very authentic and you still rely on the actual instruments, which is of course the best. But of course, since you're talking about, acoustic, so you never thought of, okay, maybe for the next album, try a different genre or a new style?
I would never say no to experimenting. Um, there were those options will always be open. But knowing myself, I'll always write songs with a piano or a guitar. Those are the two main instruments that I write songs with. Otherwise, I won't be able to write lyrics. I won't be able to compose melodies, because those are the two instruments that I'm relying on. But can I convert it or divert it into something modern? Of course I can. Will I take that chance? Probably. Maybe yes, maybe no.
Comme ci, comme ça. So, Fawaz, of course, I know you're obviously speaking in English. What inspired, like, which were like your favorite, childhood song? I'm sure everyone has the song that inspired them. You mentioned, for example, a specific artist previously, but I also heard, okay, you love the Beatles. I still remember from, I think in 2019, you were like in Saunders when they were open mics and all, and you performed the cover for Beatles, I believe, something like Hey Jude or
Yes.
something. So you're very old school. I think you still listen to old school music, or you prefer I mean, I don't know. Do you like Arabic? Did you ever try singing in Arabic or any other language? We want to know.
Believe it or not, back in school, I used to perform with the school band Kulthum songs. Pure Oriental Arabic. And in uni days, when I was in college, I sang in Arabic, purely Arabic. I did not even enter the English song world yet. I started singing English after I graduated from university, which is 2005. So there's your surprise.
Exclusive news from Fawaz. I mean, very, very different approach. Kulthum, Fairuz, and those classic. But it's always good to, learn from the authentic music, and
Definitely.
sometimes it's nice to make new things. So Fawaz Al Shaikh is Khalid Al Shaikh, the music family, and part of the descendants, because are you part of that trait? I'm curious.
Khalid Al Shaikh is a father to all Bahraini musicians.
Exactly.
No, we're not related. Unfortunately, we're not related. But I'm honored to share with him the last name.
Yeah, I'm Hussein Asiri, and there's another singer, Hussein Asiri. He's my faraway relative. I just discovered that a few days ago, which is cool, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I just saw a post of him a few days ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, he has a very nice story too. Anyways, so okay, we talked about your story and how you started. What is your piece of advice for the youth who want to start singing, but they're like, okay, I don't have enough equipment, or okay, I don't want to go to a studio to record a song?
I've been asked that question before, and I always love answering it, because passing the torch is a blessing. I did not become who I am today if not for the musicians that I've learned from, very well-known musicians in Bahrain. Ustad Mohammed Haddad, Ahmed Al-Qasim, and the Liquid Band. Ala Ghawas, who actually participated in this album and helped me write a song, and helped me co-produce another song. So they were humble enough to support me, and I've learned a lot from them. And I'm actually teaching and trying to support new talent. So my biggest advice would be, music is a very delicate subject. They have to take it very seriously. They have to take care of it. They have to protect it. I've seen, without mentioning names, okay, I've seen a lot of, mashallah, talented musicians and singers in Bahrain who just came out of nowhere, okay? And they're capable of doing miracles. But they've been taking it, easy. They joke around with it. They have fun, but it requires commitment. It requires seriousness, concentration. It's a very delicate subject. To produce something strong, I think you have to have a certain behavior, a certain profile, in order to get out of you the 100% capability that you can do.
You mentioned how you need to have a certain profile. You need to have a brand after all, because you mentioned, I know a lot of singers too, but they don't expose themselves on social media. I tell them, okay, you're very talented. Use the TikTok platforms and Instagram. At least, showcase your work, because it's not good enough. Okay, I'm not going to mention names, but an artist should always, showcase their work. But some people, Fawaz, who I also know, but without mentioning names, they might leave their industry. For example, if they're working in a different complete industry like banking or engineering, and then suddenly go to singing. But as you said, it's not a maybe flexible domain unless someone is committed. Yeah. So Fawaz, okay, since you talked about brand, how this page aims for branding, of course, and graphic design. How would you define branding for as a singer or songwriter?
I'm the worst person to answer this question.
At least you have an
When it
industry
came,
backing, so you can relate. How would you define a brand?
when it comes to branding, you see the core material of your product, which is the songs that are in the album. They're not visual, they're audible. So you need to visualize it. You need to have a banner, you need to have an artwork, you need to have a video, you need to have an ad, a post. And these require images, animation, figures. So you see, I'll just give you a simple example, but just to let you know, I'm not the best creative person to do branding, even for myself. My wife did my branding, and I'm thankful for her as well for that. But if you see the album, you'll see a silhouette of my head with 9 birds floating out of my head. Okay, so those 9 birds, they're 9 because I was born in September. That's number 1. Number 2, there are stars within the silhouette of my head, like thousands of stars. But if you focus and know the constellations and how they look like, you'll find the Virgo constellation right in the middle, in between those stars. They're not like showing directly. You have to actually know how it looks like to know that it exists in that artwork. And that's my star sign. So to do a certain branding, I think you need to know what you want to showcase to people. You need to know what you want to present or how you want to be presented. So that's the only advice I can give. But in terms of creativity, my creative part in branding is very low.
Interesting, because I actually loved your album cover. It's minimalistic, but it has a story. It's like it has an illusion, and the color is very simple but direct, and interesting story. I mean, but you're an artist, so you have a creative touch in your songs. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, Fawaz, since we are almost like running out of time and we're coming to the end of the interview, of course, I want to know your future plan. I mean, when is your next album?
I was actually planning to start writing songs for the next album in July. I think July will be a good time for me to have free time. And I can't tell when it will end. The songs are going to tell me when they want to end. And I'm serious. Yeah, and usually when you start, خلاص, the songs take over. You do the ignition, and they'll tell you when they want to end. So depending on how much time, effort, creativity they require, I would say at least a year from now.
Yeah, and I believe it's better actually for Fawaz. I prefer those artists who always have suspense and give time for an album to breathe and take its chance. Like, okay, 2 years, you think it's good for an album to get released, right? I mean, every each 2 year and then maybe 1 year each year. Like, what do you think of that point of singers who release, 20 songs in an album, but only maybe 3 or 4 become a hit?
There's no right and wrong, in my opinion. The Beatles had a 9-year career from 1960 to 1969, and they released 13 albums, and they have hundreds of hits. It's not about quantity versus quality. I think it's all about the luck has to do with your faith. Okay, luck is a percentage of success or a hit, but the main part is getting that 100% out of you for each single song in each single track. So if I'm doing Jasmine, maybe the least instrument in the song was the trumpet, but the trumpet had so much details that it took days or actually weeks to write. It took a few days to record. It took a few days to review, to mix, to master, and that was only one track of one song, and it was the least track audible in that song. So I think focusing on those micro details are gonna give you a hit.
Yes, I mean those small details they count as just like a picture, Fawaz, and I noticed like so you believe also with the length, the duration of the song. Some songs are like okay, even less than 3 minutes now, but they're very, it attracts you and becomes appealing. So you're not also with the duration of the song that matters or something like that, right?
This I think.
I
In the
mean,
music
back then,
industry, you have
classic and Oriental songs were like 10 minutes.
Of course. Echoes by Pink Floyd is 17 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. But nevertheless, I think musicians and artists sometimes have to stick with the flow. Durations are reducing because listeners nowadays have that tendency to listen to a song for a couple of minutes or maybe 3 tops before moving on to the next song.
Okay, interesting point of view. Thank you, Fawaz, for this wonderful opportunity and talk. I hope that it's very inspirational too and impactful, inspire to aspire. And with the power of social media and all the influencers, we can teach. Fawaz, before I end this, do you have any upcoming lessons or sessions that you do for singers or artists?
Not at the moment. Summer season is a bit off peak, if I may say, due to the weather and everything, unless it's indoors. But I'd love to do sessions. I've done a vocal session related to vocal harmonies once, I think a couple of years ago or 3 years ago. And we've done seminars, we've done presentations about previous albums by famous artists. So I'd love to do that. It's an idea I hadn't had in my head for a very long time. And thank you for bringing it up because it's So music can be a very high educational subject that we would love to share thoughts and ideas. So thank you for bringing that up, because I need to keep that in mind this year.
Yeah, true. Especially in Bahrain, you don't have, those where we can get a bachelor degree in music. I mean, inshallah, soon we can get that in our universities.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fawaz. This was a very nice interview. We all enjoyed, and inshallah, people will also, of course, support Fawaz by just listening to his songs, and I'm sure we all do. I mean, I'm one of your biggest fans, honestly.
Thank you
So,
so much. It means a lot, wallah.
yeah. Thank you so much, Fawaz, and thank you everyone for listening to our wonderful episode and watching it. You've been in with Hussein Asiri, and this was Fawaz from Conference of Birds from Hawiyat TV. Have a nice day, everyone. Adios. Bye bye.